All right, in this video, we're going to talk about Isaiah 13 through 14. In the previous video, we talked about the overview of 13 through 27. And now we're going to zoom in to chapter 13 through 14, except the last few verses, which is about Philistia, but we're going to do that separately. So 13 through 14 is about Babylon. And we have an interesting chiastic structure here. So look at the description below and see that the chapter can be understood in a chiastic format. First, A, overthrow of Babylon and the pronouncement of judgment. So God says, I'm going to overthrow Babylon and so on. And then it moves on to overthrow of the Babylonian Empire, like who's going to destroy and what the aftermath is going to be like. A little more details on the overthrow itself. And in section C, this is the most fascinating thing. The security of the Lord's people, a contrasting purpose. What I mean by this is, in the midst of God talking about Babylon, God suddenly talks about the Israelites, that God's going to bring them back and how they're going to be restored, and Gentiles are going to attach themselves to the Israelites and so on. So once again, as I said in the previous video, you must note that the first column, chapters 13 through 20, there is this idea, this motif of the centrality of Israel in God's plan. Okay, destruction of Babylon is not completely separate from the restoration of Israel. We'll talk more about that as we go through the verse by verse exposition. But going back to the outline, we have the B prime, the overthrow of the Babylonian king, which is supposed to be a mirror of the overthrow of the Babylonian Empire. And then we have A prime, the overthrow of Assyria and the confirmation of judgment. Overthrow of Assyria suddenly pops up. And scholars have actually wrestled a little bit on why on earth do we have Assyria here. And a very short 4 verses too. You know, compared to Babylon, who's getting 1.5 chapter. And like Assyria is the real threat in Isaiah's time. So, but I don't know how much I should say now and save how much I should save for later. But the destruction of Assyria is supposed to be a confirmation of the judgment that had been prophesied earlier about the destruction of Babylon. In other words, if in people's day, Assyria is the real threat and not Babylon, God must show his power, his management over world affairs by destroying Assyria, and that should be a ground for trust for people regarding the overthrow of Babylon and all the other countries. But we'll talk a little more about that later. But see that this oracle concerning Babylon is a one chunk in a chiastic structure. Don't be thrown out by the fact that your Bible subheadings, you know, the subtitles on the top, the titles, has this whole new section about an oracle concerning Assyria. As I said in the previous video, the word Massa, the word oracle, is the best clue to know where to divide the text rightly, because the word Massa appears 10 times, and it seems like Isaiah intended it, because we see these patterns in the first column and the second column if we structure it according to this keyword Massa. When we get to the section about the overthrow of Assyria, the word Massa does not appear. Okay, the word Massa, the word oracle doesn't appear, and hence the section on Assyria should be read in unity with the oracle on Babylon. Does that make sense? One more thing before I close this brief video on the overview of chapters 13 through 14. We need to talk about the idea of fulfillment. Long story short, there are some reasons to think that this is referring to the eschatological judgment and a near future limited judgment in the closer days of Isaiah. It's like, do you guys know what a head-up display is? HUD. Head-up display is like, you know, like a fighter jet in F-16. A pilot would, they don't want the pilot's vision to go back and forth between the outside and the inside the cockpit, like repeatedly. They want the pilot, to have the most efficient way of maneuvering his fighter jet in a combat. So they put up these information, these data, like the altitude and the speed of the aircraft and everything, on the cockpit canopy, the window, so that the pilot does not have to look up and look down and look up and look down, but can just look up and look around the sky without losing the information that he needs to be informed of. So it's kind of like that. When Isaiah is pointing his finger about this future event, he's pointing out towards the canopy, which has this information on the glass. But beyond that glass, there is more out there, and outside the cockpit, way out over there, kilometers down in the future. Over there on the cloud, he sees another fighter coming at him, or something like that. So we see that kind of event happening in this chapter, where we see both eschatological and historical events that is being talked about in these two chapters. So keep that in mind, and as we dive into the text one by one.